Hi, Tony Khan here, and today I wanted to do something a little different. In my last video, I mentioned that in this video, I was going to cover basic principles of graphic design, and this is the second part of the panel I did when I was at PenguCon last week. And I was debating how I was going to do this video, and I figured it would just be easier to just go through the slides and what it was that I presented it to them, because graphic design principles, they really do need to have visuals. So I wanted to go through that. And with the basics of graphic design principles, there are 8 of them. And we're looking at hierarchy, consistency, proximity, alignment, balance, white space, color, and then contrast. So let's go ahead and get into those. Hierarchy, what you're looking at as far as hierarchy goes is you want to have the most important part of whatever it is that you're marketing, be it the text or the imagery. You want that to be bigger and bolder than the rest of it. So when you're looking at this design, the point of this design was this is a pin back button design, and the point of it was to show that I beat and then my nemesis. The my part is smaller because if you look at this design from across the room, you want to be able to see that I beat my nemesis. The my doesn't really need to be seen as much. Consistency going into the next part. These pin back button designs were part of National Novel Writing Month last year, and the theme for that year was comic books. So I wanted to be consistent with what's usually used in comic books as far as text, the style of the text. It's usually sans serif to be bold, like really in your face. Colors, consistency with the colors. So you're looking at bright colors, red, yellow, black, blue. And then just general iconography, we're looking at like the POW symbol that's seen pretty frequently. And you also want to look at consistency across the other designs that you've done. So in the case of National Novel Writing Month, the pinback buttons that have been seen previously, they have sans serif font, so they're nice and bold. They don't have anything that's distracting. And the colors there were also bright. If there's any branding elements you need to keep into account, you want to make sure that you take that into account as well. National Novel Writing Month, while their headquarters has branding, this is for our region in and of itself, NaNoWriMo Town. We don't have branding colors, so I didn't have to stick with any of those in this case. Proximity goes along with hierarchy and consistency. With proximity, you're showing a relationship between 2 different elements. And what I mean by an element is you're looking at beat here, the word, and then the iconography behind it. Since they're close together, you're showing proximity, a closeness of it. So the POW symbol with the stars brings an association with the word beat. So the POW symbol that you would see typically in comic books, I drew that out and put it behind the word beat. So that way it would add, to be punny, to add a pun, to give it a little more punch. I didn't plan that, I promise. It just happened. Alignment is another graphic design principle you want to keep in mind. These words are aligned nicely in the space. The words aren't scattered all over everywhere. Same thing with the icons. So the little heart and the speech bubble. They're not scattered all over everywhere. When it comes to pinback buttons, you want to be able to see them from across the room. And so you need to be cognizant of where on the button that it's going to be seen. So alignment is important as far as making sure that what you're making is organized and it's all taken care of so it can be read properly to communicate what you're trying to communicate. Balance. Balance is one of my favorite graphic design principles to test for. And balance is important because you'll typically know your balance is off by thinking it's just off. It doesn't look right. Something's funny with it. And my favorite way to test for balance is to flip it upside down. So if you flip your design upside down and you see that it's off balance and it looks like it's going to tip over, that's a sign that you need to flip it back over and figure that out. So that's one of the main ways that I look at balance as a whole and see if it's working or not. White space is pretty similar to alignment. As I was talking about with alignment, you want to make sure that the designs don't go off to the edge of the design you're working with. This is important as far as designs that you're moving from a digital space to a physical space. So if you look at this design here, the design looks like there's too much space along the edge. But when it was punched into a button, that image wrapped around the metal that is the face of the button. So even though here in the digital aspect, it looked like there was too much white space, when it turned into the physical product, it looked just fine. So as far as white space goes, if you're going from a digital product to a physical product, you want to keep that in mind. And contrast and color, sorry to make your eyes bleed with this one. Depending on how you're using the colors of the design you're working with, it'll give you a different view, a different flavor. Sitting in front of this computer, seeing the yellow and the red in my peripheral vision is really distracting. It's really eye-catching, which in a way is what's wanted. But if I turn my head away and blink, I can see that red and yellow background just like punch my eyes in the face. You know how you look at the sun or something red or something really bright and you turn your head away and you can still see it when you blink? Your eyes are still firing, like the neurons in your eyes are still firing, and that's really straining for your viewer. You don't want your viewer's eyes to be strained by what they're looking at. So in looking at these different aspects of using color, if you have a cool background, so that's your blue, your purple, your green, depending on the shade or the tint of it. I made this blue really cool to tone it down. It's not a dark blue, it's a light blue. So that way the contrast between the light blue and the red and the yellow stands out a lot more. Whereas if you look at the red or the yellow, when it comes to the red, this blue POW part, it almost looks like the POW part is like fading into the background, like there's almost a hole in it, and it makes it look off. So you really want to pay attention to how you're using color, and that'll change the contrast and how eye-catching your design is. So that was a quick and dirty rundown of 8 design principles that you want to keep in mind when you're designing. And if this helped you out, if you learned something, give this a thumbs up and meet me in the comments. Tell me what your favorite part about this was, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you learned, and I'll see you there. Thanks.